Mark and I are going to give a quick preview of our SFU new institutional repository, which is launching next week. So we're quite excited about that. Many of you are already familiar with these details. We've talked about this project a couple of times. We're migrating from Drupal 6 to Islandora 2.0. We have 20,000 items or more, and it's a mix of theses and published works. So, and yeah, the soft launch is coming soon. Just an overview of what we hope to touch on during this preview. I'm not going to read it out, but there you go. And I'm going to give you a quick look at our old Drupal 6 site, and then we'll dip into the sneak peek of what's coming. So this is the current Drupal 6 installation of our IR. You can tell it needs a bit of modernizing. And yeah, I'm not going to spend much time here. So here is the new and improved Islandora 2.0 IR, a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer to look at. And we've matched as much as we could our institutional CLF, the common look and feel. So I'm just going to dive right in and talk a bit about our collections. We've organized all of our collections into 3 Uber or main collections and of departments and schools, SFU community, and theses. And we're really happy that now some items can live in more than one collection. Within these 3 main collections, there's further sub-collections and so on. So let's just take a look at archaeology in departments and schools. And you can see that there's 2 sub-collections here, and then below the items that are in archaeology are listed. So there's a bit of work to be done still on some theming and how we display things. So we're going to continue to work on that. I'd like to make it a little easier for our end user to know what they're looking at and how they can drill down into all of these sub-collections. Yep. Okay. So, and then onward to to our content types. We have 2 content types, 2 main content types, theses and published works. As you know, we started with Drupal 6, so our metadata were already Drupal fields, and so it was pretty straightforward to create our metadata in Islandora 2.0. The hard part was and continues to be data cleanup. So for both content types, we decided to try to keep the fields as common between the 2 as possible. So they all start with the resource type and the date and the abstract. And then scrolling down, we see that we have keywords. So we stopped using a controlled subject list many years ago and are now using keywords. So there are a few items, 3,000 or so. Sorry, I'm not able to switch tabs here. There are a few items that have subject headings and they will display, but we can't add new ones. Let's see if I can switch tabs. There we go. I'll just show you sort of what that looks like. And I am having troubles here getting to my other tab, so I'll just skip it and move on. I just wanted to, actually, I really wanted to show you that. Give me there. Yeah. So this is a published work, and it looks just like the theses, but there are a few fields that are different. And one of those is this publication details. And the intention here is that it will expand into citation and APA format that can be grabbed quite easily. So again, that's someplace where we have some work to do. And then moving on, I just want to end off my piece talking about taxonomies a little bit. I know Mark kind of mentioned some of these already, but we do have a few different taxonomies and thus facets. And as Mark already mentioned, our person taxonomy is really large. And we had, in the process of trying to do our cleanup of our data in that taxonomy, we discovered that it wouldn't load in the admin interface either. And it just timed out. So our service provider, Jonathan Hunt at Catalyst, he implemented a taxonomy manager, view-based taxonomy manager that allows us to browse this large taxonomy easily. It loads quickly. And we are then able to do work on this in the interface. And So that's been a real boon. As you can tell, we still haven't finished cleaning up this taxonomy, but it's a work with a lot of things in this site. It's a work in progress. So the plan is to add a menu item to the admin interface so that we can easily get here. Right now, we just add the URL, and I could just change person here to one of our other taxonomies, and it would load. If you're interested in this, you could search CCA Taxonomy Manager in GitHub. Jonathan has that there, and we'd like to thank Jonathan for implementing this for us and giving us permission to talk about it today. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to Mark, who will continue about our new instance.
Okay, thank you, Janice. Let me just queue up. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a couple of features in our new summit that are maybe, if not unique, then at least a little bit different than many IRs we've seen. The first is that we, like many institutional repositories, have implemented OAI PMH, but we have implemented two non-Dublin core OAI PMH formats. First one is so that the Library and Archives Canada, LAC, can harvest our theses. So we can now participate in the Thesis Canada aggregation service. And the second one is Open Air, which is primarily, I think, a European initiative, but it's taking off in Canada because the Canadian Association of Research Libraries is undertaking a pilot project to aggregate Canadian IR content. And to be part of that, you need to provide support for the Open Air aggregation service. So just going to go through these quickly because they're a little bit different than Dublin Core. So the only real difference between Dublin Core and the OAI PMH profile that Thesis Canada requires is that the Thesis Canada profile is very much similar to ETDMS, if any of you are familiar with that. It's basically unqualified Dublin Core, so the standard Dublin Core that OAI uses as a default, plus the addition of 3 additional fields: degree name, degree discipline, and degree grantor. And this is a screen snapshot from our team GitLab that we work with Catalyst on implementing these features. So there's that one, a little bit work there. The more challenging one is the Open Air, and it's challenging because whereas the Thesis Canada OAI profile implemented 3 new elements: degree name, degree discipline, and degree grantor, Open Air implements a bunch of different vocabularies and namespaces. And the 2 that are challenging because they not only are non-unqualified Dublin Core XML namespaces, but they require the use of specific controlled vocabularies. And this is problematic because we wouldn't normally use these vocabularies in our IR. We are only required to use them because we want to be able to provide Open Air OAI harvesting. So one example of where this is problematic is for the resource type that they require. We have our own resource type vocabulary that lines up pretty much with it, except here's one example where it doesn't line up. It's actually different, is where the core resource type vocabulary uses the term book part. SFU Summit uses book chapter. And in order to compensate for this, we need to, when there's a request for the Open Air OAI PMH request, we cannot use the taxonomy term that we normally use in the repository. It must be converted on the fly into one that's compliant with the core resource type vocabulary, in this case, book part. So there's code that will do that conversion. This other vocabulary, the access rights one, is completely alien to us. We are only implementing it because we want compatibility with Open Air OAI PMH. The 4 values, the only 4 values in this particular vocabulary, are embargoed access, metadata only access, open access, and restricted access. So we need a mapping between our own rights vocabulary, which is way bigger and way richer, to dummy it down into these 4 values in order to comply with their requirements. And this would be the case for any implementer of the OpenAir OAI PMH profile. Just talk briefly about the migration process. Janice already alluded to it, and as she said, we didn't go from mods to CSV like migration from Islandora 7X to Islandora 2 would. We went from CSV really to CSV. The biggest transition for us was, whereas the old Summit used very few vocabularies, collections were implemented as vocabularies, but everything else, names, genres, etc., were implemented as free text fields, not controlled vocabularies. So we needed to do matching on those free text fields in order to collate those values into vocabulary entries. And the tool chain that we use for the migration, Catalyst did the first migration back in August of 2021, and they used Drupal migrate framework. For every item that was added to Summit after that is yet to be migrated, will be migrated this week for our soft launch on Tuesday. We're using Workbench. And just a little bit of detail about that. Here is the CSV that we've been able to extract from the old Summit. As you can see along the top in the column headings, a lot of the fields look similar to what we are used to in Islandora 2, but they're not exactly similar. And even if they have the same field name, they may not be semantically exactly similar. That is to say, they may not mean the same thing in all cases. You'll notice that we did add a content type in the first column of the CSV, SFU published work. Most of these first 30 or so, there's one thesis. We added that in the CSV export from the old Summit so we can more easily implement logic in the custom script, the one-time custom script that we're using to convert from this into Workbench, which will then load with Workbench. So this is the same data converted into Workbench CSV, and you probably can't see the detail here, but in the field linked agent, just to the right of the middle of the columns, those of you familiar with Workbench's arcane CSV formats will see the relators embodied here, and with 3 little carets, or the little up pointing arrows above the 6 on a standard American keyboard. Those are our subfield or multiple value delimiters. You may ask why we chose that instead of the standard vertical pipe. And that is because we have a collection, a fairly big collection. It's owned by SFU's Office of Community Engagement, and they have a podcast series where they have very cute titles that have pipes in the titles. So when we figured that out, we needed to come up with, use a different subdelimiter value because the CSV was breaking because of the use of pipes. And since this was the conversion of this old Summit CSV to the new Workbench CSV was done last weekend, basically, we had to resort to scraping values from the old Summit for keywords because we just couldn't get the keywords into the CSV easily. And because this is a one-time script, we didn't care how we solved the problem. We just resorted to scraping. The last thing I'll talk about before I end is an interesting integration we have with our thesis registration system. This system is separate from the repository, the IR. It is where students register their intent to submit a thesis and then eventually do submit their thesis PDF and any attached supplemental files, for example. And how this works is there are 3 time jobs. What this does is it automatically every day moves theses from the thesis system over to Summit. And we've been using this version of this system for the last 7 or 8 years in the old Summit. We've had to modernize it and change it to suit the new Summit. And we're using Workbench as the tool that ingests the content into the new Drupal 2 or Islandora 2 repository. But the context for this is there are 3 time jobs, one at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and 11 p.m. The first one queries the thesis registration system for all the theses approved on that day. The second one takes that content, which is JSON and files like PDFs and video files and whatnot, and converts it into the organization and CSV that Workbench requires. And then the final job that runs at 11 o'clock runs Workbench, that then ingests that content into Summit.